Right. So we'll move on to the enterprise application development. So we discussed the servlet and servlet development last time. So we want to finish that first. So you need a lot of patience, a lot of commitments if you want to properly understand this subject. Okay. Right. So last time we developed few servlets. Remember, servlet and JSP are related technologies. Servlet is a class which you can map into a URL, whereas JSP is just like PHP, a page. Inside HTML, you can write your JSP code. So we configure the Wildfly server because later we need to, not later, today, we want to do enterprise Java beans as well because Tomcat is only supporting JSP servlet. Right. So we discussed what is a servlet is. A servlet is a Java class mapped to a URL. So that mapping can be done using annotations in the servlet itself, or you can do the mapping in the web.xml file under web.inf folder. We did both approaches last time and also previous day also. So this is how you do the mapping. Servlet name, servlet class, then again the servlet names URL pattern. So same servlet name must be used. So then this class is mapped to this URL. Okay. And there are some other parameters also you can set up, like load on startup. That is whether you want to preload the servlet at the server start. Otherwise, when someone accesses the servlet only, the servlet is loaded to the JVM. And other than that, your web.xml file can have the welcome files and so on. So if someone doesn't request a file, rather you just type the folder or the domain name, you will get that default file. Like usually that is index.html or index.jsp. Right. So then of course you can access it. Right. So remember, you can either extend HTTP servlet class or you can extend generic servlet. But usually, if you extend the generic servlet, you need to override the service method, which is very rarely we do, but you must aware. But if you extend HTTP servlet, then you can extend override, do get, do post, those methods. So where you have two parameters, one for the request, one for the response. HTTP servlet request, HTTP servlet response. So it's very simple topic if you understand and maybe do it practically. Okay. HTTP servlet request, HTTP servlet response. So from response, you can take the print writer and write, and from request, you can get the parameters. Other than that, there are some other servlet lifecycle methods like init method, which is invoked when the web container initializes the servlet. Then the destroy method when servlet is taken out from the JVM. So init method is a good place if you want to take database connectivity. Destroy method is another place to release your database connections. Okay. Right. So we did some examples how to create a servlet. First, we create a servlet using extending the generic servlet class. Okay. And then override the do service method. So then we map it using, of course, you can use either annotation or you can use the web.xml. Then we access it. Right? So we did only simple things. And then we created another servlet by extending the HTTP servlet class and overriding the do get or do post or both. Okay, so then either you can do mapping using annotation or web.xml. Right. So then we did an exercise to understand how the forwarding and include can be done. Forward and include can be done. So that also we did with the login screen. Okay. Right. So those things we did. And of course, yes, we use annotations. Then I skip the session handling and cookies handling because I wanted to do the database handling. Okay, so we did some database handling example. So we downloaded the JDBC connector file specific to the MySQL version we are using. And then we set up, add that jar file into our project. Okay. And then, so add that jar file to the lib folder. And also we connected it to our Eclipse environment also, so that we can see the connectivity. So then we deployed it. We wrote the code and deployed it. So get the connectivity. We wrote a helper class for that, giving the path and the database and username password. We get the connection, and from the connection we did insert, update, delete, and so on, just like we did it in semester 1 from Java JDBC. From that point onwards, the way we work is same as for any language. Okay. Right. So we did that, doing update, delete, and so on. Right. Right. So first, we want to finish our session handling and cookies handling, because last year they had asked question on session handling. I think previous year also they had asked question on session handling. So therefore, I thought of first let you learn it by yourself. But then I thought maybe I will do that as exercise as well. But you had about 1 week to do it by yourself. So if you haven't done it yet, so this is another chance for you to see how it works and how to do that in a practical manner. Okay. Right. Session handling. So remember, by default, web applications or web HTTP or World Wide Web applications are stateless. So when you send a request, it responds and forget which user response. Again, when another request comes from the same user or browser or different machine, just you respond and forget about it. You don't keep a session in the HTTP. So therefore, if you really need to keep session, that is something the server-side scripting language need to do. So we did discuss how to do it in PHP. It's super easy in PHP. You have an implicit array called underscore get or underscore post, dollar underscore get or dollar underscore post. So those arrays have the value. Sorry, not sorry, not dollar underscore get and post. That is the the form handling, and dollar underscore session. So you can set value to the dollar underscore session, and you can get value from dollar underscore session. And for each session, separate array is used. So therefore, when we code it, it is just dollar underscore session, but in runtime, each session having one variable, one array. So if there are 3 sessions, 3 different array objects are there. That is how we do it. So it's therefore it's very easy. You start a session, set the value, get the value, and when you are done, like logo for something, you destroy the session. That is how you do it. How you do it in PHP. Now let's see how to do it in JSP servlet. Okay. Specifically in servlet. Okay. So there are different ways you can handle sessions. Even you can use cookies to handle session as well. But we will discuss how to handle a session using HTTP session in the server. Remember, this is handled in the server. So using cookies, you can handle the session in the client as well, but that is not in your syllabus. So in your syllabus, how to handle session using HTTP session objects in the server. Okay. So the HTTP servlet request interface has two methods related to session. That is get session, it will give you the HTTP session object, or get session with a Boolean variable that also give you the HTTP session object. Okay. So this will always connect you to the existing session. Okay. Or if doesn't have a session, it will create a new session. Okay. Then you have a method called invalidate in that HTTP session object that will destroy the session for that particular user. Okay. Invalidate. So those are the methods you must remember. Right. So let's do the demonstration. So remember, we have been working with this. Which one we use? Is it hello or hi? I think we use hi last time. Yes, I think we use hi. Yeah, login actions and so on. So don't worry about these projects. These projects I just, yeah, hi project. So don't worry about these four projects. These four projects I just created to test the EJBs. So I will not be using those projects. I just kept those projects in case I want to copy paste code. I will use it. Okay. So this is my reference project for JSP servlet. This is what we did. Okay. So similarly, these are my reference project for EJB. We will create separate project for when we are doing EJB. Okay. Right. So first thing is, remember our servlet classes are here. Our JSP or HTML or anything will be here. Still, we haven't started JSP anyway. Right. So first, while we are doing this, I will explain. Okay, let me start the server and see whether things are going well. Start and see whether my environment is okay. Right. So my server is running. Have I deployed this? Because maybe I have not deployed it. Add and remove. Yes, I have removed everything. I will add hi. So just I want to double check my environment. Okay. That is why I'm doing this. Right. It's all up and running. Right. So let's continue. Right. So what we want to do is when you log in, we want to maintain a session for the user. So when two users log in from two machines, so they must be in two different sessions. So that is the idea. Okay. Right. So first we'll create a HTML file for login page. Okay. So it has the username and yes, it has the only the name. Okay. Let's forget about the password. Let's say just we maintain by name. Okay. No password. Right. So let's call it login session HTML. Because we already have a login form. That is why I gave it a different name. Web content and say new HTML file. Login session. Okay, login session. Right. So I'll copy paste the code because it's faster for me. all the ports are okay. Right, so it's just, it has a field for enter your name, not even a password. Okay, right. So that is my HTML page. So then I have a servlet. Okay, I will give different name because we already have servlets like first servlet and blah blah blah. Okay, so therefore I want to just give it a different name. Let me call it. So do we have two servlets, first and serve? Yes, first generic servlet and blah 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 is there, right? Right. I'll call this alpha servlet and beta servlet. Okay. Alpha servlet, which is anyway mapped to the alpha. That is good. Right. I'll call this alpha servlet. Because otherwise the name conflict will be there. And the second one, I will call it beta servlet. Okay. Right. Do I have to do anything else? And this is mapped to alpha. That is fine. Anyway. So this is if you are using the mapping, right? I will be using the annotations. Okay. So this is my alpha servlet, and this is my beta servlet. So alpha is mapped to alpha servlet. Alpha part is mapped to alpha servlet, which is alpha servlet. Beta part is mapped to beta servlet, which is the beta servlet. Okay, right. So let me create that one. New servlet alpha servlet, which is in the Aurora CS package in my case. And I want to map it to alpha, part alpha. Okay, just to make it simple and finish. And this is my alpha servlet. I will be using the annotation because it's easier. I don't need the constructor. I don't need the session serial version ID. I don't need the do post because I will be using the do get. Right. So that is my alpha servlet. I will explain the functionality while we do the coding. Okay. Right. So I will write the do get method. Do get method. Right. So I need to get the print writer. Java IO print writer. And this is my code issue. And HTTP session. Okay. Java servlet HTTP session. Right. I will explain this code. Now, when you okay, let me run this also. Let me format this code. Source format. So let me, because I had a HTML file, I prefer to re-edit. Re-add and restart. Okay, for safe side. I only add hi because I don't want the other projects. I will do the restarting also. And look for any error messages. Okay. Right, nothing, no error. Right, so remember my HTML file is called login session HTML. I will straight away use my browser. Login session.html. And of course, I get this, right? So when I say Nalaka, so when I click on the login, what happens? So it is mapped to the, so it submit to the alpha. So alpha path is mapped to alpha servlet. So what we do here, let's see what we do here. So we, from the response, of course, we set the content type. So then we get a writer, print writer, and we, from the request, we get the parameter called name, because this is name. Right, this is name, text field is name. So we get it to a variable called n. So then we write just to the out, or the response, we write welcome and the username that we get. Right, so that is simple thing. So then what we do, from the request, there's a method called get session. Remember, there's a method called get session. So we call that method to get the session object, HTTP session object. So session object has a method called set attribute. Or PHP will array set attribute. So you can give a name and value. So two parameters, two strings. One is the session parameter name, or session attribute name, session attribute value. So the name, you can give any name. I just call it username, uname. And the parameter value is the name that I got from the request. Session user name user name. Right? So that is how you set a value to the session. So then we just print a link to hyperlink called visit, and it is connected to beta, URL path beta. So therefore, when the user click on the beta link, a link called that is connected to the beta, of course, now we need another servlet or something that handle /beta URL path. Now, so therefore, let's create another class. A class එක ඇතුළට session එක තියෙන්න ඕන. ඒකනේ session handle කරනවා කියන්නේ. හරි. New servlet. Let's call it beta servlet. And it is extend from HTTP servlet. I will edit the path because I want to map it to beta. Okay. Right, I don't want to do anything, just maybe I don't need do post also, just do get. I don't need the constructors and blah blah blah. So this is my beta servlet. This is mapped to the beta. Okay. So there also I'm interested in the do get method. In do get method, what I want to do is I want to get the session parameter, session attribute in this servlet. So we set it in the previous servlet. Now I want to get it from this servlet. Okay, so that is the idea. So how to get it? Let me copy paste the code and explain. Again, I need to import Java IO print writer. This is the port issue. Also import HTTP session. Let me format the code. Right. So what we do, we set the content type to text HTML, get the writer from the response, And also the request object has a method called get session. From there, you get the session object. From the session object, there's a method called get attribute. Remember we set the attribute called uname. So now we are getting it back. And because we know that we set a string value, actually in HTTP sessions, we can even keep objects, right? Account object, dog object, right? And so on. So only thing is you need to cast it properly. So because we set a string, we cast it to string. And now we just print hello and the session value that we got. Of course, that value must be the value that the user set or the value that the user typed in the form. And then we close. That means we are sending the response. Super simple, right? So now let's redeploy the application. Restart should work because I didn't add any HTML or something like that. Okay, right. So I will redo this now. Say I will have another name, different name, Aurora. It says welcome Aurora. So that means that is not session handling, that just get it from the form. But now by this page is generated, the value uname, session attribute called uname is set to Aurora. Now we are visiting the other servlet, beta servlet, and beta servlet must be able to get that from the session and print. And it says hello Aurora. So this happened through session. Right? So every browser, every machine get different session. For example, if I go to the Chrome, then the URL must be login session HTML. Login log. First I have to type the context path hi. I think hi H capital. Right. So there I will say something else like UCSC. You can see that. So those are not getting mess. So each browser get different session object. So therefore this is UCSC. Okay. And the other one is Aurora. So two different sessions. And if I use another browser, it will be another session. And obviously, if I log in from another machine, it's another session because your session is bound to your IP address and your use agent. Okay. Right. Any questions? So that's it. So you can set value to session. You can get it in a different place. Okay. So this is if you are doing the mapping. Of course, we just use the annotations. Okay. Right. So any questions? So then you need to go through the UCSC note as well. So what are the important methods? Get session, set session. What are the important classes? So those things you must know. Right. So that is where we handle the session in the server. So that is why when you log into the system, you don't have to again log in because it keep you in a session. Your server know that this is this user. Okay. Right. So the next one is for the last topic for the servlet is cookies handling. So remember, cookies are piece of data your web server send to the browser and browser save it on behalf of the server if cookies are enabled. So usually cookies are enabled in most of the machines. Right. So then when you go to the same application by typing the URL, your browser will always check are there any cookies for this particular application. If so, this particular domain, If so, it will send a cookie. So therefore, now server has a better position to serve because it has some more idea about you because whatever the cookies set are received. Okay. But we don't do very serious thing with cookies because there can be web browsers having cookies disabled. Okay. So there are two types of cookies because they can ask these kind of theory questions as well. The non-persistent cookies and persistent cookies. So the non-persistent cookies valid for one session. The moment you close your web browser, that cookie is deleted. For temporary things, that is safest. But persistent cookies stay in your browser until it gets expired. So expiration time we can set maybe 1 week, 1 month, or even 1 year. Okay. So even though you close the browser, the cookie is there. So then when you again go to the website again or web application, your cookies will be sent. Right. Any questions? So if you have any questions, you need to clarify, right? So now we are this is a serious subject, right? Serious subject. So make sure you get things clarified before exams. Okay, before exams. Don't go to the exams with doubts. Right. So when it comes to working with cookies, Java X Servlet HTTP cookie class is there, just like the session class for the session handling. And again, you can set cookies. That means you are sending cookies to the client. And you can check whether cookies are there, whether you get cookies as part of the request. Because if there are cookies saved for a particular part or domain, browser will always send that cookie. So these are some useful methods for cookies class. Set message. So that is the number of seconds after which the cookies will be deleted by the browser. In the get name, cookie value. This is setting cookie name and set cookie value. Super simple, right? Get name, get value, set name, set value, and get message, set message. So this is how you do it. It's object oriented. You create a cookie object that is Java X Servlet HTTP cookie object. And then you can add, when you create the cookie object, make sure you set the name and value, right? Name value pair. So this must be text because cookies are saved in the browser. So you can't add objects and things. So it must be plain text. And then to the response, you can add, the response has a method called add cookie. To that, you can send your cookie object as a parameter. So then when the response is sent to the web browser, the browser will get the cookie and browser will add it to the browser cookie page. Okay. And if you want to delete a cookie, you again create a cookie with the same name and set the message to 0. So that is how you do it. That is how we do it in did it in PHP also, right? Like set message to current date. Because you can't force browser to delete cookies. What you can do is make sure that your time is passed, right? Your cookie message is a past date to at least the current date, current time, so that the cookie, the browser periodically check whether there are any expired cookies, then browser will delete it. Again, there's no guarantee that immediately the cookie is deleted, but usually the browsers check are there any expired cookies periodically. And again, you add cookie. So therefore, there's nothing called delete cookie. You just add a cookie with the same name with set message 0 and set it. So basically, you do a trick by setting the message to 0. Okay. So this is if you want to get cookies and one by one. Okay, so there's a method called get cookies. It returns your array of cookie object. If you want to iterate it, you can use for loop, or you can use array friendly for loop. So there, each cookie you can call the get name to get the cookie name, get value to get the cookie value. Okay. Right. So now let's do a practical example for cookie handling. So this is what we are going to do. So we have again the sort of the same similar page. When you submit, it goes to the servlet, something like alpha, and there we send a cookie and a response. Right? Cookie and response. So therefore, your web browser is going to save that cookie and display the response. And there we are going to have another hyperlink or something. And when you say go there, map to the servlet 2, and servlet 2 must get the cookie, which we can use it to give a customized response. Right. So this is not session handling. This is sort of a session handling, but we use the browser rather than the server to manage it. So therefore, this is cookie handling. Okay. Again, this form is the same, but because we want to map it to a different servlet, let's create a different, let's call it a different form, different name. Okay. So let's call it cookies demo form. You know where the HTML files are created? ඔයගොල්ලෝ environment එක setup කරගත්තට පස්සේ මේ subject එක හරිම ලේසි. සමහරුන්ට වෙලා තියෙන කම්මැලිකමට environment එක setup කරගන්න යන්නේ නැහැ. හරි? බොරුවෙන්ම මේක කරන්න හදනවා. බොරුවෙන් කරන්න හදන්න එපා. IT කරන්න ආව නම් software එක වැඩ කරන්න ඕන. code කරන්න ඕන. දැන් මෙඩිකල් කොලෙජ් ගියා නම් එහෙම කියන්න බෑනේ මට මෝචරියට යන්න බෑ මිනි කපන්න බෑ සර්ච් නේද? වාට්ටු වලට යන්න බෑ කියලා නේද? එතකොට ආයේ මොන මගුලකටද මෙඩිකල් කොලෙජ් ආවේ කියලා. පිස්සෙක්ද කියලා. නේද? ඒ වගේ තමයි වාට කියන්න බෑ මේ මට සර්වර් එකක් සෙටප් කරගන්න බෑ. ඒ තමයි වෙනම බොරුවක් කරන්න ජීවිතේ. Right, so we create another HTML file which is similar to the previous one. Of course, identical to the previous one. So action rather than one, last time we used alpha and beta. Let's give it a different name. Okay, I call it. I will call it cookie 1 and cookie 2. Right? අපි අර කියමු cookie 1 කියලා. Cookie 1 at එක. So that we will map here. Okay. So why we call it cookie 1. So this is my path. Servlet. New servlet. I will call it class as COOKIE cookie 1. Cookie 1 කියලා මම නම දුන්නේ. And I will map it to cookie 1. ඒ නමම තමයි simple වලින් මම ගත්තා. Cookie 1. Next, I don't need two posts. Finish. Right. So in cookie 1, we want to set the cookie. We want to set the cookie. So I'll copy paste the code and explain. So let me import the print writer. and also import the JavaX servlet HTTP cookie. Right. So what we do here? So this is mapped to cookie one. Okay, cookie one. That is this one. Okay. Right. All set. We set the content type to text HTML. We get the writer. Then from the request, we get the username. That is from the form. Okay. Username in capital. Then we print welcome your username just like the previous one. Then what we do? We create a cookie object now, giving the uname as the cookie name and value as the value that I got from the form submission. So එයාගේ username එකම තමයි අපි cookie එක විදිහට set කරලා යවන්නේ දැන්. එයා type කරන username එක එයාගේ browser එකේම save කරනවා. ඔය වගේ තමයි password එක save කරද්දිත් කරන්න පුළුවන්. එයාගේ password එක එයාගේ browser එකේම save කරන්න පුළුවන්. But that is a very bad thing to do. Right? But this is just to demonstrate. ඊළඟ පාර එයාගේ password එක එයා type කරන්නේ නැතුව එනවා. cookie එකෙන් අරගෙන. Right. So we create a cookie and we add cookie to the response. So response has add cookie method. To that we add that cookie object. So then we have another form here with post. ඒකට අපි මේක කරා. එතන මෙතන post එකක් දාන්න දෙයක් නැහැ. අපිට ඕන hyperlink එකක් දාන්නත් තියුණා. right? මෙතන hyperlink එකක් දාලා link කරන්නත් තියුණා. right. එහෙම කරමුද? ඔච්චර දඟලන්න ඕනේ නැහැ නේද? post එකකින් ගත්තේ අයියෝ. තමයි post එක කරේ නැත්නම් එහෙම cookies එන්නේ නැහැ මම හිතන්නේ. මොනවාම අතරට පටයක් ඇති. නැත්නම් සාමාන්‍යයෙන් මෙතනට post එකක් දාන්න උවමනාවක් නැහැ. right anyway. So this servlet is mapped to cookie 1 and let's map this one to cookie 2. Right, cookie 2. Cookie 2. Okay. C-double-O ජරා නමක් දාලා තියෙන්නේ. C-double-O එකක් දාන්න තියෙනවා නේද? cookie කියන එකට. Let me refactor. Refactor. Rename. Cookie 1. File name එක වෙනස් වුණා. හරි. මෙයාට දාමු cookie 2 කියලා. Cookie 2. Okay, cookie 2. right. අපි එතකොට එයාට තමයි මෙතන submit වෙන්නේ. එතකොට cookie එක add කරලා තමයි response එක ඇවලා තියෙන්නේ. මෙයා hyperlink මේක submit කරාම තමයි ඊළඟ servlet එකට යන්නේ. So let's create that servlet now. Cookie 2 servlet. Servlet. Cookie 2. Extend from HTTP servlet. Let's map it to cookie 2. I don't need constructor. I need to do post because we post it. මම ඉතින් post කරන්නේ cookies එන්නේ නැහැ get එකට බලන්න මතක විදියට. හරි. බලන්න. ඒක කළා බලන්න ඕන නම් get එකටත් කළා. මට හරියට sure නැහැ. Right. So since we did that post, we override the do post method. Right. Let me copy paste the code for the second one. Import the print writer. Import the cookie class. Right. So what do we do here? We set the content type, take the get writer, and from the request, why don't we have the get cookie method? Get cookies කියලා method එක නැහැ. Okay. What is there? Cookies. මම වෙන්නේ වැරදි import එකක් කරලා තියෙනවා. That is the issue. Java X WSRS import එකක් කරලා තියෙන එක වැරදිනේ. Right. අපි මේක import කරමු. එතකොට ඒක කොහොම කරන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. Let me import it again. I did a wrong import the last time. Import කරනවම වැරදි එක import කරලා තියුවා. So I need to import this one, not the first one. I import the first one last. Java X servlet HTTP. Okay, right now it should be okay. Get cookies. The type of expression must be an array type, but it override resolve to cookie. This must be array then. Right, so now it's fine. So this must be a cookie array. Okay, like int array. Right, so now it's fine. So we get the cookies array from request. Remember the method is get cookies. And from that cookie array, we take the 0th element because we have set only one value. Its value, that value must be the cookie we have set last time. කලින් පාර set කරපු cookie එක තමයි දැන් එන්න ඕන. Browse again. So අපි ඒක අද print කරනවා. So this time it is not we kept the username in our session server, rather we save it in the client browser and we get it back. ඒක ඊට පවෙන්ද කරත් එනවා හැබැයි. මොකද server session එක time out වෙනවා. ඒක විනාඩි ගානක් අපිට set කරන්න පුළුවන් පැයක් හරි පැය භාගයක් හරි කියලා. But this is cookie එක expire නැත්තම් තාම තියෙනවා. හරි. Right. So now we can test this. And this is mapped to the cookie 2. Right. මේක හරිනේ cookie 2 නේ මෙතන map කරේ. හරි cookie 2. All set. Right. So let's, because I add some HTML files, I prefer to first do add remove. And let's add it. Hi. And then I will restart also. So then I need to access login. So the cookie demo form. Cookie demo form. .html. And similar UI. This time I will say Kapila and go. HTML method post is not supported by this URL. Why is that? මම ගිහලා ලියන්න නැත්තේ get එකේ නම් අර. Let me double check. So yes, I have written this code in the do get method. So that is why I got a message saying do post is not supported. Right. Because this is do post and I'm sending it through post. Post කළම යවන්නේ. පේනව නේද? Post කළා යවන්න. override කරලා තියෙන do get එක. So therefore just I need to rename this to do post because the method signature is the same. දැන් වෙන දැන් බට error එකක් ආවා කියලා මම එච්චර කලබල වෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒක තමයි experience එක කියන්නේ. ඒක තමයි maturity එක කියන්නේ. ඒක තමයි ඔයගොල්ලෝ ගන්න ඕන. දැන් සමහරව අහනවානේ මේ අපිට experience නැතුව job වලට යන්න බෑ කියන්නේ. ඔය job වලට යන්න බෑ තමයි. experience එක ගන්න ඕන trainee කෙනෙක් විදිහට ගිහිල්ලා. trainee associate software engineer කෙනෙක් විදිහට ගිහිල්ලා. මොකද මුල හරිය කලබල තමයි තියෙන්නේ වැඩිපුර. හරි. හිතා ගන්න බෑ මොනවද වෙන්නේ කියලා. නමුත් ටිකක් දවස් ගියාට පස්සේ හරියට අපි එහෙම බය වෙන්නේ නැහැ error එකක් ආවා කියලා. මහා ලොකුවට. And I think software develop කරනවා කියන්නේ මහා කර්මකාර job එකක් වෙනවා. Right, so we need to restart. Because I did change to my servlet. Now, Kapila, so again at there. Cookie one post up. Now restarted. Cookie, me cookie two again. Cookie one again, then I had one cookie one. Oh, now cookie one again do post the. Make a sync. Okay, let's remove and net. අනිවාර්යෙන් සිංක් කරලා නැති ප්‍රශ්නයක් වෙන්න ඕනේ මේකෙදි නේද? එයාගේ do post එක නැහැ කියලා. දැන් නම් යන්න ඕන. COOKIE1. COOKIE1. And we have the do post. What is that? Cookie 1. This HTTP method post is not supported by this URL. Cookie 1. Cookie 1 is this one. And it has do post. Okay. Protected void do post. HTTP servlet request, HTTP servlet response. Okay, so let's run it from here. Run as run nodes. Run node server. Any idea? Cookie 1 spelling. Spelling අවුලක් වෙන්න බෑ නේද? Line 13. ප්‍රෝග්‍රෑම් spelling අවුලක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්ද? Set cookie 1. Cookie COOKI. එතන අවුලක් තියෙනවා. COOKI ද තියෙන්නේ. ඕනේ. Yes, so that is the issue. So this is COOKIE1. මට අතන වෙනස් කරේ නෑ. Yeah, so ROM mapping, right? ROM mapping, right? So now it's done. So this is now I fix that issue. Okay, now I fix it, right? Thank you. So that is the issue. Right. But they will patch it. So this is COOKIE Right. Now it should be okay. Now I can just restart it. Okay. Now definitely the problem is solved. So that is the other advantage of working as a team. දැන් මට ඒක සමහරට තව පැයක් බැලුවත් අහුවෙන්නේ නැහැ. සමහරලාට අපි කරන ඒවාට අපි බ්ලයින්ඩ්. අපි හිතනවා එතන නෙමෙයි වැරද්ද තියෙන්නේ කියලා. අපි හැමතිස්සෙම හිතනවා වෙන තැනක වැරද්ද තියෙන කියලා සමහරලාට. සමහරට පැයක් කල්පනා කරත් අර කල්පනා කරන ඒක සමහරට හිතන්න අමතක වෙනවා. ඒතර වෙන කෙනෙක් ටක් ගාලා අහුවෙනවා. මොකද එයා බලන්නේ තමන් බලන විදිහට නෙමෙයි. Now it should work. Right. Welcome Kapila. Now my browser must have saved this particular cookie, right? Uname කියලා. දැන් මම submit කරනකොට ඒ cookie එකත් එක්ක තමයි යවන්නේ. browser එක යවන්නේ. To the cookie 2 applet, cookie 2 servlet. So there you should that servlet must get my cookie. So therefore it will again send me identify me as Kapila. එතනත් අර වගේ ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවා. cookie 2 එතනත් spelling mistake එකක් තියෙනවා නේ. ඔබ COOKIE TWO COOKIE ඒක නම් හරිනේ. COOKIE TWO ඒකත් මට අහුවෙන්නේ නැද්ද? කම කද්දප්ප. මොකද කම අවුලක් තියෙන්නේ. මෙයා කොහෙද කම අවුලක් තියෙන්නේ? මේ පෝට් එක ඔප්ෂන් කාලද මගේ? පෝට් දෙක පැටලිලාද? දැන් මේක ඩබල් පෝට් හන්න මෙයා සිංගල් පෝට් වෙන්න ඕනේ. ඒකට පටේ. restart again. මෙන්න මෙතන මොකක් හරි උඩ පටයක් තියෙනවා. cookie COOKIE TWO right. So now I think there was a spelling mistake. හැබැයි මෙතන ඇවිල්ලා දිනවට වෙන එකක්. ඇයි ඒ cookie එකේ මේ මගේ මැෂින් එකේ ලැප්ටොප් එකේ නමත් එක්කම ඇවිල්ලා තිනවා. මොකක් හරි අවුලක් තියෙනවා. මේක එන්ක්‍රිප්ට් වෙලා තමයි cookie එක දීලා තියෙන්නේ ෂුවර් එකට. cookie එක එන්ක්‍රිප්ට් වෙලා දීලා තිනවා. එන්ක්‍රිප්ට් වෙච්ච cookie එක තමයි මේ ඇවිල්ලා තියෙන්නේ. ඒකෙන් දැන් ගොඩ දාගන්නේ කොහොමද? ඔය බලන්න. So at least I am getting the cookie, some sort of a thing, but this must be encrypted cookie. And then what I call servlet. servlet ඔගොල්ලෝ හොයාගත්තොත් මට කලින් කියන්න මොකක් හරි මෙතඩ් එකක් කන්වර්ට් කරන විදිය. servlet get cookies does not encoded value or whatever. බලන්න මගේ අකුරක් හරි වෙනස් වුණාද කියලා cookie එකකට නැවිලා තියෙනවා. හරිනේ නම. cookie 0. cookie 0 එකේ ආව වෙන මොනවාද? new name කියලා. මේ නමෙන් ගත්තේ නැති කියලා මට තියෙන ප්‍රශ්නේ. නමෙන් ගන්න බැරිද? Okay, so let's try to get the get name also. Get name එකත් වැඩද කියලා get name. නමත් බලන්න පුළුවන්. මෙතන BR එකක් දාමු. So we can check whether we get the correct cookie now. Cookie restart. Let's type something else. Hello J session ID. Session ID එක තමයි අවිල්ලා තියෙන්නේ උඩින්. මේක ඇත්ත මේ session ID එක ගැන අහලා තිබුණා ගිය පාර පේපර් එකේ. හරි? දැක්ක session ID එක තමයි අවිල්ලා තියෙන්නේ. So this is not the cookie, that is session ID. Okay. I will double check, maybe the way the session the cookie is handled in my Firefox is slightly different. Okay. Session ID එක අවිල්ලා තියෙන්නේ 0ත් එක වෙනවා. Let's try the first one then. Zero cookie එක විතර ඇවිල්ලා තියෙන session ID එක. දැක්කද? First එකේ තමයි රෙහාන කියන එක තියෙන්නේ. So 0th element is what? The session ID. So this is the session ID. That is unique session ID they have created. My browser has created. බලන්න browser එකට මගේ machine එකේ නමයි ඔක්කොම දාලා machine එක හදලා තියෙන්නේ. And this is uname and Rehana. So therefore it is not 0. You need to use the first one. ඒකත් හොඳයි 0 එක ගත්ත එක මොකද මේක session ID එක ගැන අහලා තිනවා ගිය පාර පේපර් එකේ. හරි? ගිය පාර පේපර් එකේ. So I will update the note also to make it 1. But remember 0th one is the session ID. Okay. 0th one is the session ID. Right. So that's it about cookies. Okay. Right. So now we are done with JSP servlet. We are done with servlet. Okay. Right. So we'll take a small break. After the break, we'll do the JSP. So then we will go through your UCSC note for JSP servlet. Then we'll do 2 past paper questions. Right. So we have fully covered servlet, including session handling, cookies handling, form handling, database handling. Okay. Right. So now we are moving to the JSP or the Java server pages. Now remember servlet is a Java class. So there are pros and cons of using servlet. So because it's a Java class, working with objects, object-oriented programming, those things are very easy. But because it's a class, if you are doing UI related thing, it is overhead is there because you need to get the print writer and use the print method, okay, which is little bit difficult, a complicated task. And also if you have a lot of CSS, CSS, JavaScript and so on, things are going to be really unnecessarily complicated. So therefore we have another technology called JSP. So when you work with a lot of UI heavy things, rather than map your URL to the servlet, you can use a JSP. So there inside the JSP, you can write Java code. Just like inside HTML, you write PHP, right? You write PHP. So you can write normal HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and using the scriptlet tag, just like the PHP tag, you can write JSP code. So that is the idea. Okay. Right. So your JSP code can be there just like your HTML code. Of course, if you have subfolder, then it will be subpath. Okay. So there are a few concepts related to JSP like scriptlet tag, expressions, declarations, directives, and so on. Okay. Right. So let's do a very simple example. So this is a very simple JSP code. Okay. So let's call this hello JSP. I will share you the code at the end because all the code are in one folder, therefore it's easier for you. New, I'll say JSP file. You can see just like HTML, you have the JSP file. I'll just call it hello JSP. It's just like HTML. Okay. So you can see this is 100% HTML, but you can see it has, this is a JSP tag. Okay. So it says language is Java, content type text HTML and so on. Right. So that is generated one. Right. So we don't need these things. Let's forget about the title also. Right. So in your body, now you can write your JSP. Right. You can write your JSP because it's a JSP, right? Just like PHP file. This is not HTML file. Okay. Right. So let's add, if you want to print something, this is how you print to the JSP, your page. But this is a JSP code, just like PHP code. Okay. Just like PHP code. Let's have double quotes. So why are we getting error? Syntax error. Percentage equal percentage greater than. I think earlier something wrong with my quotes. Okay. Right. So this is something like a hello world JSP. So now let's access this one. Anyway, this one is called hello.jsp. I will restart and see whether I can access it or I will redeploy it. Hello JSP. Hi dash hello.jsp. You can see welcome to JSP. මම port එකක් වැඩිම ඉදලා. Yeah, there are two. There are දෙකක් ඇතිලා. හරි. Right. Welcome to JSP. So that is how you write something. You just have the less than mark, percentage, equal, then whatever you want to write. So here you can have the variables, right? You can have the control structures. All those things are available for your JSP. Okay. So I'm just giving you the startup so that you can start doing experimenting with JSP as well. Right. So these are called, this is a statement. Okay. This is a statement. So whatever you write it inside this is print. Right. It is print. Okay. So this is less than sign, percentage equal. Then this is percentage greater than. So then we have another thing that is JSP declaration tag. That is less than percentage exclamation mark, then percentage greater than sign. So that is how you declare your variables and so on. If you want to declare a variable, you need to use this syntax. Okay. So you can use it to declare variables like integer variable, double, float, string. Okay. So then you can refer to those variable later. Okay. For example, let's do it. So percentage exclamation mark. So that is where you can write your, say, double x equal 12.6. Okay. And now you can refer to this variable inside your JSP. This is also JSP, but this is declaration. Okay. This is declaration. Let's say plus x. So usually when you save, it's auto synchronize. You can see welcome to JSP 12.6. So basically the value of x is 12.6, which is a double variable. Okay. So, but this code block you can only use to declare variables. This is you write to the output. Okay, write to the output. You can see those are two different syntax, two different code blocks. Okay. So then you have the directives. Okay. It's like page directives, include directives, tag lib directives. So those are a little bit advanced concepts. For that you have the percentage ampersand mark. Right? Percentage ampersand mark. So this is a page directive where you want to import, that is something like include. Okay. Import a particular page part. Okay. So it's pretty much like including in HTML page. Okay. So then you have a concept called tag libraries and so on. Okay. Right. So this is our JSP demo. This is an HTML file, and this is declaring a variable. And then so if you use the normal scriptlet tag, you must use outprint. But if you use percentage equal, you don't have to say outprint, it is anyway print. Okay. So therefore, if you use this percentage mark, if you want to print something, you must use out.print. And declarations, you must use this. It's little bit headache, that is how they have done it. Okay. So that is a very simple hello world application. Right. So only difference is rather than equal mark, uh, we just, if you omit the equal mark, you must use out.print. Okay. Out.print. But here you can do anything, declarations, printing, everything. So then you don't need this. Okay. You don't need this. So therefore, we prefer to use this approach because then everything is similar. So this is Y. Let's have the X also. So you have the request also available, but anyway, this one we don't want to use it. Okay, let's do that also. Let's have another BR. Here you don't need. Environment called the 10, 20, and this is null because so we are taking it from the request. මේ ගන්න මොකද request එක. request එක uname කියලා කියවෙන්නේ නැහැ නේ. අපි uname කියලා යවමු query path එකේ. question mark uname equal, let's say Nalaka. So now you can see welcome Nalaka. So because I'm just sending the my parameter in the query path, because that is something we can do. That is something you learn in PHP. So if I send this as Kapila, it's welcome Kapila. So these are coming from the server. Okay. So you can see that once you're familiar with JSP, you will find that JSP is easier than servlet. JSP is easy. Now you can see that we are straight away, we use declaring variables. So out is used to print, and you can see request is also available. So the request, the same request object that you used to work with in servlet is also available. So request.get parameter. So therefore, so this, because we can mix HTML and your request, session, cookies, all those things are available for your JSP as well. Okay, your JSP as well. Right. So this is called a scriptlet. Okay, scriptlet. Right. So now we'll go through your UCSC note. So then we'll have a look at your past paper questions as well. Right. Servlet development and deployment. Right. What is client? What is server? HTML, HTTP, right? Simple HTML file, HTML forms. That is something you learn in semester 2. So a bit of refreshing on JavaScript also there. So they can ask JavaScript question also. So they ask you to use Tomcat, but I didn't use Tomcat because then you need to configure Tomcat for JSP servlet and Wildfly for enterprise Java beans. So therefore, I just configure only Wildfly. That is fine, right? Because it doesn't matter what is your server is, the functionality is the same. Okay, right. So anyway, this is another server, but this is only a web server. No other support for enterprise Java beans and so on. But Wildfly is both web server and enterprise application server. Okay. Right. So this is HTTP request, HTTP response. What is a servlet? We have discussed those things. Right. Remember web container and EJB container. So your servlets JSP is run by web container. Tomcat has a web container, but Wildfly has both web container and EJB container. Okay. So your web container runs, take care of your servlet and JSP. So servlet is just a Java class that you can map it to a URL. Okay. Servlet mapping using web XML file. මේවා compile කරලා Java file එකක් හදනවා නම් හරි Java file එකක් හදනවා නම් අපි එහෙම කරේ නෑ අපි කර කෙලින්ම මේ හැබැයි මේ commands බලාගෙන යන්න මේවා හයි හරි කොහොමද Java file එක හදාගන්නේ කියලා මේ normal Java C command එකම තමයි deployment descriptor, that is your web XML file. So some packages, servlet package, HTTP package. So remember the servlet interface has service method, init method, destroy method, and get servlet config and get servlet info. Okay. So that is generic servlet class. මතකනේ අපි ඉස්සරම servlet එකදී generic servlet class එක extend කළා. So then we had to override the service method. Right, service method. service method, right? Init method, service method, destroy method. So then we have the HTTP servlet request and HTTP servlet response, HTTP servlet response. Servlet request, HTTP servlet request. So generic servlet has the servlet request and servlet response. HTTP servlet class has HTTP servlet request and HTTP servlet response has the two parameters. So how to get the parameter values from the request? We did those things. So this is how you write JSP. Right? Out.print JSP ලියන විදිය HTML ඇතුලේ. Right? A very simple JSP like this. අපි දැන් කරේ ඔය එකක් තමයි හරි. Right. So we remember we discussed about the request dispatcher, forwarding and including. Right? Forward, include. We did an exercise for that. We did similar example using a login form. මේ වගේම එකක් කරයා. We also I also explain how to do the send redirect. මේවා තියෙන ඔක්කොම කවර් කරලා තියෙනවා. ඔයගොල්ලන්ට අඩුවෙන් කරලා යවන්න exam වලට. එහෙම තරම් unethical විදියට අපි class කරන්නේ නැහැ. Right. So then Java annotation, when it comes to annotate your servlet to a URL. So these are some standard annotations you use in semester 1. Override, duplicated, and so on. Okay. And these are the servlet annotations. Right. So these are some advanced annotations, but we use web servlet annotation to map URL, give it a name and path to your servlet. Then of course, how to connect to database using JDBC. We did that as a practical example. So get the connection. Then of course create statement. These are the same thing you learn in semester 1 JDBC. Then you execute update if it is insert to update, or you can just do the query. So this is execute query when you are retrieving data. So we did a sort of a CRUD operation application. Right. So today we discuss about session handling. Right. How to do session handling? We did with HTTP session. But if you want, you can do the session handling using cookies also. Remember that cookies 0th element was HTTP session ID, because the new approach is do the session handling using the cookies rather than in the server. Because when you do the session handling in the server, if you have thousands of user sessions, your server needs a lot of memory resources. So therefore, better approach is as much as possible use the cookies, manage your sessions. Right. So remember, we use get session method and also set session. We didn't use invalidate, right? If you want, you can invalidate in logo for something like that kind of a functionality. So then we discuss about cookies. Get cookies method, add cookie, create a cookie object, and add cookie to the response. And from request, you can call the get cookies, and it will give you a cookie array. So your 0th one is the session ID, then first one, second one, you can get it. Event listeners, so it's a little bit advanced topic related to servlets. Okay, advanced like life cycle management and so on. So then we did the basics of JSP. JSP පොඩ්ඩයි touch කරලා තියෙන note එකේ. මම ඒක වැඩි කරේ නැත්තේ. මොකද නැත්නම් වැඩක් වැඩිනේ. So descriptions, scriptlets, expressions, directives, So this is how you declare variables. Okay. So this is where you can do almost anything. Declare variables, print, or any other coding. So this is called a JSP scriptlet. You can write those things in your HTML. And this is a JSP expression where if you want to print something, so then here you don't have to use this out method. Okay, out method, print method. If you use this kind of a thing, they have given you very simple sort of a hello world JSP. Get attribute color data tika karagena print color. So these are other directives like include, import. There's a concept called tag libraries. You can introduce your own tags as an extension to HTML. And the implicit objects, right? You have the session object, request object, response object. JSP page available. Right? Print writer is already available. Servlet get request response unknown print writer. Out object available. Implicitly available. Okay. Right. So that is JSP servlet. The past paper question දෙකක් තියෙනවා කද මතක් කරගන්න. ඔගන්න past paper දෙකයි තියෙන්නේ. හරි මේක අලුතෙන් දාපු subject එකනේ අවුරුදු past paper දෙක. 2023 papers තියෙනවද? 2023 exams තිබ්බ නේද? තිබ්බනේ. Anyway, I'll check whether 2023 are their papers, but for the time being, let's first do the 2021 part 2. So you get only 2 questions. Right. 2 questions, 1 hour. Both are mandatory. Right. Question number 1. So මේක අපිට තාම කරන්න බෑ. Remote method invocation කරා නමුත් අපි දැන් අපි මේ වෙලාවේ කරන්නේ JSP servlet නේ. Java RMI අපි කරලා තියන්නේ. Right. Second question. Write required XML statement to set up parameter name BIT that has the value vlebit.lk in the deployment descriptor or the web XML. Okay. Then write down the required Java code snippet to access the object using setup parameters. මතකද අර init param කියලා දෙකක් අපි කතා කරා. web XML එකේ. So this is servlet, URL mapping and so on. So then you have init param අපි වෙනම කතා කරේ නෑ නේද? නෑ වෙනම කතා කරේ නෑ ඒක පොඩ්ඩයි අවුල එළියෙන් තමයි අහලා තියෙන්නේ. note එකේ දිනුනෙත් නෑ හැබැයි initial parameters ගැන හරි. Yeah, we did not discuss that. Right, so there the idea is we can provide additional details to your servlets. So we call them init params. It's something like this load on startup. Right, so we can provide additional parameters. ඒක ඔයාගේ note එකේ තියුනේ නැති හන්දම කරේ නෑ හැබැයි වෙතනින් තමයි අහලා තියෙන question එක හරි. That is a little bit unfair, but anyway, it may be it is mentioned in your reference book. Okay. Right. So anyway, let's do the question. Right. So you want to send up additional details to this. So then you need to have the init param tag, and you have the param name, param value, parameter name, parameter value. It's very easy question, but unless you know the tag names, you can't do it. Okay. So that is part of the web XML. For the web XML එක දාන්න පුළුවන් අනිත් දේවල් ටිකත් බලා ගන්න. If you go to something like servlet web.xml configuration, I think the best is Geek for Geek. You can servlet name, servlet mapping, init param එක ගැන කතා කරලා තියෙනවා. මොකද ඒක වැඩි පාවිච්චි කරන එකක් නෙමෙයි ඔය init param කියන එක. ඒකයි මම කරේ නැත්නම් මේවයිත් ඒක කතා කරන්නේ නැහැ සාමාන්‍යයෙන්. මේකෙම තමයි අහලා තියෙන්නේ. හරි පළවෙනි අවුරුද්ද. Let's take another one. So one of the least used functionality in web XML init param. මේවයිත් කතා කරන්නේ නැති එකක් තමයි අහලා. මේ ඉතින් param නේ. can say init param, param name, parameter value. මේකට additional parameters මොන හරි දෙන්න ඕන නම් ඔයාගේ web application එකට, so you can set up those things using this XML notation init param, and under that you have the param name, param value, parameter name, parameter value, which you can access from your servlets. Okay, you can access from your servlet. Now the servlet එකට අපි configuration කරන වෙලාව තමයි මේ details යවන්නේ. So practical usage is maybe this may be your database username password. So rather than you hard code the username and password in your servlet class, you access it from these parameters, because web XML file you can change at any time, right? You can change at any time without restarting the server also. So therefore we can change those values, and your your web application is using the parameter that is you have provided from the XML. So the idea is don't touch your JSP servlet classes. If you want to do some changes, make them to the web XML file parameters which you access in the runtime. That is the idea. හරි ඒක පොඩි note එකක් දාලා තියාගන්න. මොකද එකපාරකුත් අහලා තියෙනවා මේ init param මේක ඇතුලේ තියෙනවා the param name, param value. වගේ ඔයාලට ඕන ගානක් parameters name value pairs set up කරන්න පුළුවන්. ඒවා servlet එකෙන් access කරන්න පුළුවන්. Right, so that is what they have asked. Okay. ඉතින් access කරන විදිය get servlet config කියලා අරගෙන ඒකේ තියෙනවා get init parameter කියලා. So for any servlet you can do this. For any servlet you can do it. ඔයාලා අපි කරපු example එකක් කරලා බලන්න පුළුවන් ඕනනම් හරි. web XML එක හරහා නම් කරන්න. Right, B part. Write a deployment descriptor for the servlet name A, B, and C that confirms to the following call patterns. Servlet A is selected by the container when any request made for .do extension. .do extension. Servlet B is selected by container when any request is made to UCSC/class B. ඒ කියන්නේ මේ pattern එක map වෙන්න ඕන servlet B ට. B ගේ name එක තමයි B. Then /UCSC map to the servlet C. So assume following servlets are called with following URL /BIT. BIT is your web context, and this is your other part. එතකොට BIT තමයි web context එක විදිහට තියෙන්නේ. All servlets are deployed in this particular package lk.ucsc.bit. මේක ඇල්ලත් එක්ක ඔයා servlet name එක දෙන්න ඕන package එකත් එක්ක. අපි අර දුන්නේ com Aurora CS කියලා. Right? So it's simple thing. Servlet name, servlet class. Then servlet mapping එකේ servlet name එක අරගෙන URL pattern එක දෙන්න. So your servlet name is LKUCSC bit A. උදේ class එකේ නමත් A කියලා අරගන්න කියලා තියෙනවා. And then servlet name A is mapped to star.do. මොකද එයා කියලා තියෙනවා මේක star.do කියන URL pattern එකට map කරන්න කියලා. star.do. So then servlet B is lk.ucsc.bit.b and it is mapped to /ucsc/class B because BIT is your context, right? BIT is your context. So then similarly C is mapped to lk.ucsc.bit.c. So then that also must be mapped to UCSC / so ඒක UCSC කියන එකට map කරාම ඇති. UCSC star එකකුත් දාලා තිනවා UCSC star කියලා. Right. So 3 servlets. We have given each servlet a name. එයා කියපු නම්මයි දාලා තියෙන ABC. මොකද එයා කියනවා ඒවා නම් කරන්න කියලා ABC කියලා. So then each servlet name is mapped to a URL path pattern that they have mentioned. star.do, UCSC class B and UCSC. Okay. මෙතන star එක නම් අත්‍යවශ්‍ය නැහැ. හරි. එච්චර දෙක තියෙන්නේ. ඔච්චරයි තියෙන්නේ. හරි. මේ වැඩේ තියෙන දැන් මේක ප්‍රශ්න දෙකයි පොඩි දෙන්නේ. ඒක හරි ගියේ නැත්තම් එහෙම ඉර වුණොත් එහෙම ඒකට ගොඩක් අර පාස් වෙන්න බෑ. මෙතන 150ක් තියෙන මෙතන. එනතන 150ක් ලකුණු තියෙනවා. So therefore it's very risky paper because you get only 2 small questions. Okay. ගොඩක් questions උනා risk එක අඩු වෙනවා. ගොඩක් questions උනා සමහර question කොහොමද කරගන්නවා. දැන් මෙතන question දෙකයි චූටි question දෙකක් වුණාට පස්සේ සමහරලාට ඔයාලා ඒක ඔළුවට වැදුන්නේ නැත්නම් එහෙම කළා නැත්නම් එහෙම කෙලිම subject එක fail තමයි ඉතින් මොකද 50ක් 150ක් MCQ වලින් විතරක් ලකුණු ගන්න අමාරුයි. Right, so that is 2021 paper. Second question we did. First question we can do later. First question එකත් අතරින් දැන් කරන්න පුළුවන්. නමුත් අපි ඒක වෙනම කරමු. අපි web socket තාම කරලා නැහැ වෙయ్యා. අපි කරේ remote method invocation කැලේ විතරයි කරේ. Web socket is another topic we have. ඒක අපි පස්සේ කරනවා. පස්සේ කියන්නේ ඊළඟ class වල කරනවා. So you can see web socket. That is your 10th topic. Web socket. It's a very easy topic. Web socket කරන්න බෑ servlet JSP තේරුම් ගත්තේ නැති කෙනෙක්ට. Web socket කියන්නේ මේ JSP servlet වලට අදාළ වෙන තව කතන්දරයක්. Right, so let's look at the 2022 paper. ඒ වගේම question එකක් තියුනේ. Right, so you just need to say true or false. Consider the statement below and state whether they are true or false. If the statement is true, write T. If the false, write false in the space provided. HTTP protocol and web servers are stateless. HTTP is stateless. So that is why we need to do session handling. By default, stateless. They respond and forget. So therefore, if you need session states, so you need to do the session handling using creating the session objects and so on. Okay. By default, HTTP is stateless protocol. Session is a conversational state between the server and the client. Yes. ඔයාගේ දිගටම මේ session එක maintain වෙනවා. මේ ඉන්නේ ඔයා තමයි කියලා දිගටම දන්නවා යා. මේ IP address එකෙන් ආව. During that session, until that session is time out. Third one. Each request and response between the client and the server should have the session information passed between them to maintain the session. Yes. මේ දෙක අතර මොකද වෙන්නේ? session information අර ඒක තර cookies කියලා පළවෙනියට ගියේ. session ID එක. දැන් මතකද session ID එක අපිට වදින 0 එකේ ගිහිල්ලා. අපි කිව්ව first එකේ තියෙන වෙනුවට අපි 0th element එක අරන් ගත්තම ඒකේ තියෙන session ID එක තමයි. ඔය session ID එක දිගට මෙහෙට යනවා. server එක browser එක server එක යවනවා. browser එකට browser එක ආයේ session ID එක එවනවා. එතකොට එයා දන්නා මේ එකම session එක තමයි යන්නේ කියලා. Right? So that can be used to handle session rather than maintaining session in the server. Maintaining session in the server. So that means it's sort of a cookies. Right? ඒක cookie එකක් වගේ නමුත් cookies disable කරාට ගොඩක් අයට අර session ID එක disable කරන්නේ නැහැ. So if you use that approach, that is better because then you don't need to use memory in the server. Okay. Yes. So therefore, yes. Each request and response between the client and server should have the session information passed between them to maintain the session. The deployment descriptor cannot control when the servlet is loaded by the server. False. ඒක තමයි load on startup එකක් අපි කතා කරේ. මේක server එක start වෙනකොටම servlet එක start කරලා තියන්න පුළුවන්. So therefore deployment descriptor can control when the servlet is loaded. So that is why we have the load on startup parameter. You can see the load on startup element of the WebXML loads the servlet at the time of deployment or server start. When the server start, the servlet is also loaded. If the value is positive, it is known as pre-initialization of the servlet. Okay, what me order change කරන්න පුළුවන්. මේකට පස්සේ මේ servlet එකට පස්සේ මේ servlet එක load වෙන්න ඕනේ, මේ servlet එකට පස්සේ මේ servlet එක load වෙන්න ඕනේ කියලා. Right. So the 0 value will be loaded first, then 1, 2, 3 and so on. ඔයාලට පුළුවන් එක servlet එකකට කියන්නේ මෙයා 0, මෙයා 1, මෙයා 2. එතකොට අර servlet එක load වුණාට පස්සේ ඊළඟ servlet එක load වෙනවා. Because sometimes the second servlet need the first servlet. If you pass the negative value, servlet will be loaded at the request time, at the first request. Negative value එකක් කියන්නේ එහෙම කලින් load කරන්න එපා. Right? Negative value එකක් තියෙනවා. ඉතින් negative value එකක් දාන්න පුළුවන් ඒක ඔක නොදා ඉන්න. නොදා ඉන්නවා කියන්නේ negative value එකක් දැම්මා වගේ තමයි. Right? So the highest, so the 0th servlet will be loaded first, then the first one, then the second one, and then the third one, and so on. That is if you want the pattern or sequence, or else you can everywhere you can say something like 1, so then all are loaded. But if you don't have that loaded startup parameter, or if you have a negative value for that one, so that servlet is loaded only when the first URL request come for that servlet. Okay. So therefore this is false because it says cannot. Application server is another name for web server. False, right? Because application server is for EJBs. Web server is for web JSP server. So for example, what we use is application server, which has both web server and application server both. So Tomcat is a web server, whereas Wildfly is an application server which support both application and web. Okay, so Tomcat is a web server, Wildfly is an application server. But most of the time, application servers support both application and web both. WebXML can be replaced by the use of annotations. Okay. So, sort of a yes, it's a debatable answer anyway. Okay. Some of the functionalities of the WebXML can be replaced by annotations, but not all the functionalities. So that is why I thought actually the answer should be yes, but you can see examiner's answer is false. Maybe the reason is, so for example, remember the last few examples, we never touched the WebXML. But there are some features like welcome file list and so on, which you can't, like the initial parameters, init params. So those things you can't replace by annotations. So therefore, in a way, we need to agree with the examiner's answer. You can't replace some of the functionalities, yes. But still the WebXML has some functionalities which you have to configure using the WebXML. Okay, so therefore, anyway, the answer is pretty much correct. Can be replaced, only some functionalities can be replaced. Okay. Right, B part. What is the exclusive identifier used for session maintenance in servlet session management? අපිට ඔක දැන් අහුනේ අර පළවෙනි පැරාමීටර් එකේ තියෙන මොකද්ද? session ID කියලා. J session ID මතකද? බලන්න ඒකත් අහලා තියෙනවා. කොහෙවත් වගේ නෝට් එකේ තියුන්නේ නැහැ හරි. නෝට් එකේ තියුන්නේ නැහැ. But the name we use is J session ID. What are the 4 methods to exchange exclusive identifier generated by the server in the session management? හරි ඒකත් අපිට කෙලිම note එකේ දිවිච්ච ගන්න නෙමෙයි. Of course we can use cookies. මතකද cookies ඇතුළේ තියෙන්නේ session ID එක. Right. So exclusive identifier generated by the server in the session management. So you can use cookies. අපිට ඕන hidden form field එකක් විදිහට යවන්න පුළුවන්. form field එකක් විදිහට අර පැත්තට යවන්න පුළුවන්. අනිත් දෙක නම් ටිකක් වෙන advanced කතන්දර දෙකක්. URL rewriting and secure socket layer කියන එක. හරි. But definitely cookies or hidden field මම හිතන්නේ මේක කොහේ හරි වගේ note එකේ තියුණා. හරි. So what is the default method to exchanging the exclusive identifier? The default method is cookies. අර අපිට 0th element එක ඇවිල්ලා ආවුනේ. default විදියට cookies වල යවන්නේ. මේ cookies වල යවන එක එච්චර secure නෑ. ඒක හන්දා කියලා තියෙන මේ secure socket layer එකට SSL කරලා මේක encrypt කරලා යවන්න පුළුවන් කියලා. හරි. So you can see that the question things are not the very easy, but now at least you can get an idea about what kind of questions they ask, what is the expectation, and you have more than 1 month prepare. So make sure you read the reference book, go to some, for example, you can do a search like JSP servlet tutorial, Java point එක tutorials හොඳයි හරි. JSP servlet, then EJB tutorial, Java point එකේ තියෙන tutorial සාමාන්‍ය හොඳයි. Tutorials point එකේ තියෙනවත් ගොඩක් හොඳයි. ඊළඟ geek for geeks ඔය තුන දැන් මේ software developers ට තියෙන ප්‍රධානම resource තුන තමයි මොකද්ද? Geek for geeks, tutorials point, Java point. ඔයිට අමතරව W3 school. W3 school එකත් හොඳයි. හැබැයි ඒක අර තියෙන්නේ ගොඩක් HTML CSS වගේ දේවල්. හරි. මතක තියාගන්න Java point විශේෂයෙන්ම Java දේවල් වලට JSP servlet Java වගේ වට JDBC tutorials point geek for geek. Okay. geek for geek. මේ ඔය tutorial වල කතන්දර ටික තියෙනවා කොහොමද? හරි. Because this is a degree program, right? So they expect you to do more things, right? Self-learning and so on. You can see servlet filters. So you must be more and more serious. Okay, so now you are in the higher diploma level, right? Not the diploma level. So you must get into that more and more self-learning mode, right? Proactively go to the past papers and identify what are the expectations. Do things in a practical manner. දැන් මේවා practically කරන්නේ නැති කෙනාට මේව කියවන්න තේරෙන්නේ නැහැ. මම කරන්නේ ඔයාලට practical කරන්න පුළුවන් level එකට හදලා දෙන එක තමයි මගේ වැඩේ. එතකොට හරි තියෙන්නේ මේවත් එක්ක වැඩ කරලා කෝඩ් කර කර බලලා හරි ඉගෙන ගන්න. Right. Right. So we did past papers of the 2 questions. So ඔයාලට පේනවා ඊළඟ question එක ගොඩක් අඩ අහලා තියෙන web socket වලින්. ඒ කියන්නේ exam එකේ වැඩිපුර question අහලා තියෙන web socket වලින් සහ JSP servlet වලින්. EJPs වගේ වයින් අහලා නැහැ. හරි? හැබැයි ඒකෙන් කියන්නේ object relational mapping වලින් අහලා නැහැ second paper එකේ. නමුත් අපි දන්නේ නැහැ ඕගොල්ලන්ගේ අවුරුදු 10යි සමහරට. මොකද syllabus එකේ තියෙනවානේ. මේ අවුරුදු දෙකේම අහලා තියෙන්නේ JSP servlet වලින් එක question එකයි web socket වලින් එක question. ඒ කියන්නේ web පැත්තෙන් අහලා තියෙන්නේ paper දෙකේම. හරි? paper දෙකේ. කියන්නේ වැඩි weight එකක් දාන්න ඕන ඕගොල්ලෝ JSP servlet වලට web socket ඊළඟට remote method invocation අපි කරපු ඒවට. හරි? Right. So we'll stop at this point. අපි EJB අද කරන්න බෑ. EJB කරොත් එහෙම තව පැය දෙකක් විතර යනවා EJB කරන්න. හැබැයි MCQ තියෙනවා EJB වලින්. හරි? Right. So we'll stop at this point, right? So we'll have another session, another extra session. අපි ගිය සතියේ කරේ Wednesday නේද? Yeah. We will have another session Wednesday. අපි Wednesday class එකේ පුළුවන් වුණොත් එමේ Wednesday class එකේ අපි EJB කරමු. EJB කරමු නැත්නම් අපිට පුළුවන් ඕනනම් past papers කරන්න අනිත් subject වල. PJB කරමු නේ නැත්නම් අපිට මේ subject එක track කරලා ඉවර කරන්න පුළුවන් ගියේ. හරි? අපි EJB කරමු මේක. EJB කරලා වෙලා තිබුණොත් past paper එකක් කරමු. තව වෙන subject එකක past paper එකක්. හරි? Right. So we stop at this point. Right. Thank you.